the agenda before you. Are there any comments you would like to make about the agenda? Any changes? Is there a motion that we approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second? Commissioner Foster moves. Is there a second? Commissioner Corella. All in favor, please raise your right hand. It is unanimous. I will say that Commissioner Barker has to be excused tonight. He is unable to be with us. So we have with Commissioner Sobian's resignation last month, we have our full complement here with 6 of us. So we'll do our best. Before we move to public comments, Commissioner Schein would like to have some information he would like to impart to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for the benefit of the folks who are here for public comment, and also the benefit of many folks that are watching on government television. That is, you may or may not know that I think last night or 2 nights ago, I guess this last Monday, the City Council passed legislation to appoint the 11 members to the ad hoc task force on the Police Oversight Commission and the revision of the ordinance. I have obtained, and I think it's public information, I'm sure it's public information, the biography of the brief biography of each of the 11 commissioners or committee members, and I must say it's a very impressive, high-quality group of people who are going to become involved in how best to revise the ordinance and make recommendations to the City Council. And I, as chair of the Long-Term Planning Committee, and I'm sure my other colleagues on the commission, look forward to cooperating with the Police Oversight Task Force. I would also notify the public that there has apparently already been a meeting scheduled with the task force for this Tuesday, August 20th at 5:30, beginning at 5:30 p.m. and 7 p.m. It's going to be held in the Albuquerque City Council on the 9th floor of City Hall. And I think this is going to be a meeting, I got a copy of the draft agenda. I think this is going to be a meeting which is not going to be public comment, it's just kind of an organizational meeting to get started. And there have been already 3 tentative dates established that I would pass on to the public for the public forums that have been would be required by the ordinance. And these are tentative, subject to the discussion, I guess, and approval of the task force at this first meeting, just so people can know and put it on their calendar if they choose to, subject to whatever obviously the task force finally does. They're proposing a possible public forum on Tuesday, September 3rd at the North Valley Senior Center from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. On Tuesday, September 17th at the West Mesa Community Center from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And on Tuesday, October 1st at the Cesar Chavez Community Center from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And for myself personally, and I suspect for the rest of the commissioners, I encourage everyone, the members of the public, to engage with this task force and provide whatever insight you can provide to the task force, because in the long run it will benefit the city, the public, the City Council, this commission, and the police as well. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
There's no doubt it's a big job, and we do wish them well. A note about public comments, to remind you that we have 2 minutes per person, and you're free to speak about whatever you wish to speak about. I understand one of our public would like to address one of the CPCs. You are welcome to do that in your 2 minutes. So first up, we have Mr. Mike Gomez.
Remember, don't vote for this guy here, all right? Do not vote dump Dick Barry. Now let's get to the POC. I guess we should give a little moment of silence for Richard Sobian being gone. He's the last MB in Linda Martinez's disgraceful era, so it's a good thing that he's out of here. And hopefully we won't get any more like him. Now, let's talk about what's right. Let's talk about when you review cases. Remember to ask questions about the videos, the belt recordings, when they weren't made. There's going to be every excuse in the book. You've already been hearing it, you know. We forgot to turn it on, or it malfunctioned, or we didn't put it into the computer, you know. Isn't that right, Mr. Foster? Okay, good. I'm glad you're listening. It's all because they lie. They've been convinced, they've been taught to lie. They're taught military, paramilitary tactics instead of peacekeeping. I have to see the police force in the state it's in. Also, for your benefit, the DOJ likes to hear that you listen to citizens. So please take a look at what Mr. Silvio D'Angelo has been given to you, his ideas, because he's been there and done that. And, you know, you should really take a look at them and, you know, really consider some of them. Because he put a lot of work into that, and he cares. Like all of us, he cares. And have a good
Thank you, Mr. Delangelo.
Does it work? Does the sound work?
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it's working. Chair Cameron, rest of the commissioners, you copied my script, so I won't repeat it. Most of you folks are starting to get it, particularly Mrs. and Mr. Barker not here today. There's still no transparency or accountability in APD or this oversight process. You know, more today will be people will be denied justice because recordings made to prove that the officers lied. Honest officers record, lying officers don't. It should not be ignored. You know, this preponderance of evidence, again, to be used by Ms. Hammer, you know, since there's no recording, will again deny citizen complaints assuming they lied. The question I have, Dawn Roberto at the top was fired based on a CPC, and it was never presented to this COC. Ms. Hammer bypassed it. You know, the package I gave you has 20 pages of recommendations to the oversight process, and a lot of other emails that I stopped asking Ms. Hammer to send to you because I know she wouldn't. You know, I've been proactive. I've suggested change the ordinance. You should see the email, in one email, Ms. Hammer sitting right next to the chief and the other senior leaders. You know which side she's on. And at her side, she's made that very clear at Monday's council meeting. Most of the 11 task force appointees are really clueless. I mean, they're good people, they're clueless. They're not. They've never attended any meeting nor have any of those who selected them. Most of the, you know, what I'm asking you is be proactive. Propose changes now. And I'm asking you, Chairman Cameron, I want to talk during the CPC. You're telling me I cannot talk during the CPC. Are you telling me that?
I instructed you that you had...
Are you telling me that? Yes
your time
or
is
no?
up.
Yes or no?
I'm telling you that you've had your chance to speak tonight, and it is over.
Will you allow me to speak on the CPC?
You've had your chance to speak tonight.
The answer is no?
That's correct.
Fine.
Mr. Charles Harris.
Good evening. I'm really pleased to see that you got to experience the frustration I have repeatedly felt misquoted in your minutes. By not being able to correctly record on-camera motion votes, Ms. Hammer has shown her disrespect for the commission, her ineptitude, and that her off-camera investigations of citizens' complaints cannot be trusted. I urge you to pass a resolution asking the City Council to immediately terminate Robin Hammer for failure to perform her contractual duties in bad faith in her capacity as IRO. I also hope that the IRO staff preserve verbatim what must be historic to this commission statements at the last LTPC meeting by Chairman Shine when he stated, I quote, "It does make us kind of moot." A discussion of his concerns that the POC had been left out of a citizen complaint process that ultimately led to the firing of APD officer Don Roberto. I wish to commend you all on the positive work you have done in bringing public confidence back to this commission. It is truly a shame that Hammer continues to try and dash your accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. That concludes public comments. Now come to our minutes. First, we take up the minutes from June 11th, June 13th of 2013. Yes, Commissioner Stein.
Mr. Chair, I had some corrections on this minutes, grammatical and a couple of small substantive changes, but I'd like to just, and I'll hand those in a document with the corrections to the staff. And with that, those amendments, I move to approve the minutes as. So move.
Seconding the motion. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Siegel.
I direct my fellow commissioners to the bottom of page 3 and ask if you understand something that I don't understand, or perhaps Commissioner Shine can remark as to whether he's made clarification to this. It talks about a motion made, and then it says votes, and then it says after that, all in favor of the motion as amended passed, and then gives another list of names voting, and I just didn't understand what the minutes are showing us there.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Shine.
I would say that I did not make any corrections there. It wasn't terribly artfully done, but I thought that what happened was an accurate reflection of the changes that were made that are in the prior paragraph, the indented paragraph in the original motion. And as amended, that was the motion that was passed. Might not have been artfully written, but I think it's accurate to that extent.
Yes.
May I ask, Ben, you're saying that the first list of votes, in fact, the names are different as to who voted for and against it, has to do with accepting the amendments
That's correct.
for consideration by this board,
Yes,
by this commission.
I think that's the procedure we followed. It was a little convoluted, but I think that's the procedure we followed.
But then it says all in favor of the motion is amended, and that's not true because five were for it and 2 were against it. Motion is amended passed. How it ought to read, Commissioner Shine?
I'll make that change on the version I'm submitting to the staff. So read the motion as amended.
Passed for consideration by the full body, then the motion came before us, and different of us voted for and against it. Consideration of the motion passed. I couldn't follow what was happening. We've got a giant red question mark.
What if I just say that instead of all in favor of the motion as amended, to read the motion as amended was then voted upon, period, and the rest is saying passed, the vote.
That's fine.
It seems to me, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move along too, as we all probably would, that after the indented paragraph, it should read, motion to consider the amendment for, and there were 5 and 2. That passed. Then motion to approve the amended language for and against.
So before the first 5-2 vote, the sentence should be inserted. The motion to amend the motion to amend the motion was then voted upon.
Correct, and the word passed should be at the end of that indented paragraph. Above it.
I think those corrections are not made.
Thank you.
So are there any other substantive changes or just language changes in spelling?
There were, I think on these, most of my changes were from that, but on page 8, I had some questions at the top of page 8, and I assume the staff would clarify it. The first full sentence, I didn't understand what it meant. Under the contract, the IRO has the ability to conduct investigations. I didn't understand the context of what that meant. I put a question mark there, and that's one of the things I would hope that they have to just clarify.
It is a bit ambiguous. Under the current contract, the IRO
So what?
does not have the ability to conduct investigations. Ms. Hammer, do you have a suggestion how to word that? Page 8 at the top.
I would suggest deleting it because it is a summary of what I said during my report, and it certainly doesn't seem to be relevant to the rest of the paragraph.
So you deleted?
Yes.
I'll start through, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
On my copy. No, people just
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve these minutes, trusting Mr. Shine to submit some non-substantial, or I don't know how to put that,
unsubstantive.
some non-substantive changes, but changes that are more semantic and typographical. Is that, I'm understanding that? Okay. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, so that's the June minutes. We move to the July minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Shine?
I would move to amend these, I would approve these minutes as amended with the same notion of submitting some technical amendments, some technical corrections. I only had one substantive matter that I thought should be corrected, and that is on page 4, CPC 9613. After the first vote, I think a more accurate statement of the sentence should read, after discussion about the standards used by the IRO for inactivation, comma, Vice Chair Siegel moved to revote on POC, and the rest is the same. And then, after the second vote, the sentence beginning, Vice Chair Siegel moved to remand CPC 096-13 for revision of the letter, not for further investigation, since the 90 days had passed, we couldn't have further investigation. So it should read revision of the letter. Those are substantive, that's why I bring them to the Commission's attention. The only other thing I changed was on page 6, Roman numeral 10, so it's clear what study is being referred to in the last line. I inserted calls for the 30-city study. So,
For the third city study.
yeah. That's the one being done by the long-term.
Any other suggestions for amendments? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 2, item 7, the very first PC 106-12 says in the second sentence, an allegation against Officer M was unfounded on conduct, the allegation against Coast Officer C was sustained. None of those actually occurred. I believe those sentences should be struck in their entirety. Then it goes on to say Commissioner Schein moved to remand the letter, and I think we should strike the words for further right. I think it's clear to just say move to remand the letter.
Yeah, sorry, I just caught up to where you are. Can you repeat that, please?
Certainly. The first paragraph of CPC 106-12, after the first sentence, it describes two allegations, and the commission took no action on this item except to remand it, so I think those should be struck. They only confuse the matter. They show findings against these officers one way or the other, and I think they should be struck in their entirety, the second and third sentences.
Okay, so this, because the letter was remanded back to the IRO, we took no stance on the...
Correct, and I think the minutes would be clearer without findings, which had been proposed, but which in fact not adopted by this commission.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'm
Commissioner.
sorry. One other thing I forgot to mention. On the last page, 7, on the annual and quarterly reports, the second line, the word for approval should be struck out. So it just reads, the IRO HAMA expects to present the reports to the city council soon. Because when they're presented, it's not approval of the city council, it's just being presented. But with those changes and the changes by Commissioner Siegel, I would request support for the motion to approve. Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the amendments, the minutes as amended, please raise your right hand. It is unanimous. Thank you for your diligence and attention to the details. We have no citizen appeals before us, so let's go right into our citizen complaint letters.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner.
I neglected to mention it as we took up the agenda, but CPCs 123 through 13 et al., which are the last ones listed, ought to be moved up sequentially to the line above, 113 and 128. I'll take them in numerical and calendar order. CPC 123 et al., which is the last one, at least on my agenda.
Right.
Ought to be moved up a line at 128.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hammer, did you, I mean,
I don't have a problem with that.
I wrote hammer. Okay, thank you.
First case I would like to present to you is CPC 106-12, a matter which was remanded, as we just discussed in the last minutes from the last hearing. You may recall this is a case in which a husband and wife called the police because their son was mentally ill and there was a domestic violence situation. The case was remanded to rewrite the letter to include the explanation that the officer followed the domestic violence policy of the department and to outline what behaviors officers are supposed to look for in terms of mental illness. And in fact, the officer did comply with all of the SOPs with respect to domestic violence and mental illness. After however, Coast Specialist C had spoken with the complainant and said that they would return a phone call and help them set up treatment for their son. A month passed between the time when the initial report was made and then the complainant's son committed suicide a month after the police had been to the home and arrested her son. So the ultimate findings remain as presented last month, that the allegations regarding the Officer M failed to follow SOPs as unfounded, as he did follow the SOPs for his behavior and his conduct. and the laws and rules that he followed. Coast Specialist C was, I recommend being sustained for his failure to perform his duty to establish the efficiency and functions of the department. I recommend that you approve this letter as written.
Yes, Commissioner Shine.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to commend staff, the IRO and staff, for writing what is now an extremely well-done, comprehensive, sensitive letter in a very unfortunate situation, which had a very sad and tragic outcome. Based upon what I'd like to move for approval of the letter.
The motion is to approve CPC 106-12. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
I'll second.
Now, is there a discussion?
I was, yes. And pursuant to public comment by Mr. Delangela on addressing meetings, I have no idea which of these CPCs he was interested to discuss, but I'd like to take up a moment of our time to clarify the situation as I best understand it. Under our rules, under Section 7, addressing meetings, under A, it talks about public comment, and under Section 7B, this is all in Section 1 of our rules, persons may be invited by the POC to address it on a particular agenda item for the purpose of a general address. These invitees may be given a time established by the chair, but normally would be 10 minutes. So I would say that it would be at this commission's discretion to permit to speak or not, or to follow your lead and not permit any discussion. But I understand that, at least from my reading of these rules, it would be permissible under the rules if we as a commission so decided.
I think you're correct. Commissioner Foster.
What does, Commissioner Siegel, what does this have to do with what was presented here?
The speaker during public comment wanted the right to speak to a CPC. Which one, I have no idea.
Well, we were discussing something else.
We were discussing the first of the CPCs.
Let's come back to order. You can carry on your conversations otherwise, but I think what we have is Commissioner Siegel has asked a question. It has been responded to, so let's move on to further consideration. Is there anyone who has discussion about 106-12?
Has it been seconded?
It has been seconded. Okay, all in favor of approving CPC 106-12, please raise your right hand. It is unanimous.
The next case I'd like to discuss is, on the agenda is 182-12. And that is a case in which the complainant complained about an incorrect, she alleged that an officer made an incorrect police report. This is a case in which an officer came upon an accident on his way to work. He discussed what happened at the accident with both drivers. At the time that this incident occurred, he was not required to tape it pursuant to SOP. And so I found that the officer stated that he asked both individuals what happened. He reflected that what he heard from them in the report, actually the other driver confirmed what the officer said. Nonetheless, I recommend that we find that the allegation against the officer for making an improper report to be not sustained. I recommend that you approve my letter as written.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the letter?
Move to,
Mr. Shine, is there a second?
I'm sorry, I move to approve 147-2.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to cut you off. And you, Commissioner Foster, seconded that. Is there discussion on this CPC?
I would just point out that what I just presented is 182-12.
Right.
Oh, I'm
Oh, what
sorry.
did you,
I beg your pardon.
I'm sorry, I was looking at it, but didn't notice the discrepancy.
I amend my motion to 182.
Okay, would you amend your second?
Yes, I will.
All right, great. Any discussion? All in favor of approving CPC 182-12, please raise your right hand. Okay, it is unanimous.
The next CPC I'd like to present for your consideration is CPC 147-12, which is an allegation in which a woman complained that officers came to her house, looked around, and one of them put their hands on their She was very upset with the fact that there was an officer with a hand on his weapon. The independent review office investigator interviewed the person's, the complainant and her partner, as well as the police officers, and also looked at video lapel cam of this incident, which lasted approximately 2 minutes of the encounter of the police at the home. And based on the review of the investigation, I determined that the officer's conduct, Officer F, Officer M, Officer D, and Officer P I recommend that they would all be exonerated because they were following the SOP for their procedures of their conduct during their time. They're about 2 minutes with the complainant. And so I recommend that you approve the letter as written.
Is there a motion to approve the letter? Okay, a second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Commissioner Burrell?
I just had a couple of issues with this case in particular. From the reading of the letter, I couldn't understand. It was my understanding that the officers never actually told the residents why they were in the home until after they looked around the house and determined they were at the wrong place. Is that correct?
No, I believe that they told them that when they first got there, that they were there on a suicide, to find a person of suicide.
Okay, I don't remember seeing that in the letter. I do remember seeing that one officer said nobody asked him why he was there, so he didn't volunteer the explanation. That would be my concern with them coming in. I can understand why the individual would be upset and scared when officers come in the house, not tell them what's going on and put their hand on the gun. That was my, I'm kind of concerned with that.
Is that, Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Sean, you...
May I make a suggestion that the motion be amended so that it'll be approved with a clarification that clarification be added to the letter?
Well, hang on with that, because it may affect how Commissioner Varela wants to vote on this letter if the officer did not identify why they were there. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but
No, yes.
that's what it sounds
I'm
like.
just reading something else. Hold on.
That's simply where he said that's why he didn't volunteer next to me.
Oh,
We're on 147-12.
Officer F told them that they were there about a call. This is on the review of the lapel video. It's not any officer statement. It's the video shows that Officer F explained that they were there about a call for suicide and were given the wrong address. When the complainant complained about the officer having his hand on his gun, he explained that often suicidal subjects have weapons.
well, okay.
But I think that was contemporaneous with when the officers came in. Officer F explained to her what was going on. That was my
Okay.
understanding.
From the lapel video?
Yes.
Because just the way that I was reading it, it seemed like they went in, then determined it was the wrong address, and then explained to the individuals why they were there, and they were sorry because they were at the wrong place.
I believe that what first happened, she invites them in, she asks them why you have your hand on your gun, and then he says to her, we have our hand on our gun because it's a call for suicide.
Okay, and that's
So
fine.
it was the consent to enter and then an explanation of what they were doing and why they were there.
Okay, that was unclear from when I had initially read it.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to pursue or have?
No, I think that was.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Siegel.
Thank you, I'm sorry, you know that I just walked over and asked you what case we're on. It's because this one doesn't appear on the agenda, and I didn't, for some reason, wind up with a copy of it in my stack review, so I'm I was a little lost.
It's on the agenda.
Top of the third column.
It's on the agenda.
My third column, the top of the third column reads 251-12.
Yeah, the wrong agenda.
Yes, wrong agenda.
Mine's for August 8th. All right, I apologize. I will not vote on this case because I didn't prepare and didn't read the case and didn't seem to have it in my stack.
Mr. Chair, may I make a suggestion to the maker of the motion and the seconder that the motion be approved, that the motion be to approve the letter with the additional requirement that the IRO clarify the language of the letter to make it clear that it was noticed to the complainant when they first came in as to what their purpose was. If that would be acceptable to the maker of the motion.
On advice of my Robert's rules, we're going to go ahead and vote on the amendment. I mean, not the motion as presented. And if it is voted down, then we will amend. Okay? All right, so it has been moved and seconded. Is there all in favor of approving CPC 147-12? Please raise your right hand. Okay. It is 4 in favor, 2 against, or 1 chooses not to
I'll
vote.
change my vote to 4.
Okay. So we have 5 in favor and 1 that did not vote. Commissioner Siegel. Okay. Next.
The next matter I wish to present is matter 251-12, in which the complainant is deaf, and she alleged that the officers were rude, made improper statements to her during a traffic stop. The independent review office investigator interviewed the complainant as well as the 2 officers who were present during the traffic stop as well. Both the officers said that they didn't have, at the time of the incident, they didn't have any problems communicating with the woman, the complainant, because to her disability, but they did not record the traffic stop in its entirety. And so I recommend that you approve my finding that the conduct against the officer is not sustained as to whether or not he conducted himself in a manner to reflect favorably upon the department with respect to the violation of the SOP requiring to record, that I found that it would be sustained, and I recommend that you approve the letter as written.
Okay. Yes.
Move to approve CPC 251-12.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Foster. Seconded. Is there discussion? Yes, Commissioner Siegel.
In this case, the IRO, I believe, correctly finds that it was improper that a recording was not made, which would have explained a lot if it had been made. While the officer alleges there was no communication problem, the complainant says there was, and the complainant is deaf. While the officer may feel that he is explaining and having an absolutely wonderful discussion, if the recipient is deaf, it may be impossible for the recipient to communicate with him, and that's the nature of the complaint. In addition, she complains about a bright spotlight used to illuminate the vehicle, which was making it even harder for her to see or possibly lip read, as best I understood this write-up. So I can't support the 50-50 conclusions that probably nothing happened. Irrespective of the fact there's no evidence of it, it seems to me her complaint is quite reasonable and valid. I believe that the underlying complaint itself should probably be sustained based on the testimony of the complainant in this case.
Commissioner Varela.
I agree with Commissioner Siegel on this. My biggest concern was that the officer said he had no problem communicating with her, and I didn't see in his statement to the IRO investigator where he even mentioned that during the conversation he realized that she was in fact deaf. Also, the fact that there is no lapel video, I think, you know, also weighs to that side, in my opinion, just because I think if she is, you know, she's had, as Commissioner Siegel said, he may have thought he was communicating, she's the one with the disability and she couldn't understand it. So it is concerning that, and it's also stated here that he realized she was upset about the bright light spotlight, but it doesn't say why he thought she was upset, and she says that she said she was upset because she reads lips and was not able to read lips. So because of those concerns, I am also not able to support the letter.
Commissioner Shine.
May I point out that maybe one of us is overreading this, but what doesn't make sense to me, that she didn't understand what was going on. Presumably, even if someone's deaf, both sides could recognize whether they're communicating. I mean, the officer could tell by her responses that she was understanding what he said. Of course, if she was in fact deaf, if you look at the first page of the letter, she alleged in her complaint that she tried to explain to the officer she was deaf, but she could not see because of the bright light. He said, quote, "I don't care if you can't hear, I don't care if you can't see, I don't care if you can't read lips." Well, how does she know that if she's deaf and she's not able to read the lips? I mean, so I don't know that you can read too much into the facts of the letter. It seemed to me that there was a communication from the investigation of what was the interview of the lady by the IRO and by the IRO investigator. It seemed to me there was adequate communication, and therefore the IRO's findings are reasonable.
Commissioner Foster.
Sergeant, could you explain why during evening hours, why an officer illuminates an automobile on a traffic stop or a felony stop? To enlighten our commissioners?
Sure, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Foster. Basically, it's a tactic that we use as we're approaching a vehicle. It's a safety measure for us. That way, we're not an open target or an illuminated target that somebody could see if someone had an intent to injure us.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Shine.
Could I also suggest to the sergeant that it's also so the officer can see the person and see whether they're reaching for something or inappropriately or whatever. It's not just so that the officer's not illuminated, it's to illuminate the person to make sure that the person's not doing something inappropriate.
Sure, that is correct also.
Okay. Any other conversation? Okay, are we ready to vote? All in favor of approving the IRO's findings in CPC 251-12, please raise your right hand. All who would not approve it, please raise your right hand.
It's not approved.
It is a tie, so that means it's
Fails.
not approved. Okay. Sorry, hold on just a second.
Mr. Scott Schapul says that we need to further review that the rules of the POC are different than the Robert's Rules of Orders with respect to ties. And he would ask that
Okay.
Mr. Du Bois give us assistance in that regard.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Shine.
I believe the rule is that if it's a tie vote, the motion fails.
Well, we'll let Mr. Du Bois look it up and we'll be sure, since there is a question about it. advisement of council that with a tie vote, the status quo is maintained, which means that the letter is not approved.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Shine.
I'd like this time to make a motion to remand CPC 251-12 to the IRO for further review.
Second.
Mr. Foster has seconded. This is the first time, I think, that I've been on the commission where we've not approved the letter. IRO Hammer, is there, what will you do with it when we remand it back to you?
Well, we could further explain what the findings of the investigation were in the letter. Obviously, we're not going to conduct an additional investigation. And I have been remiss in my presentations at the CPCs to say that in all of the letters that I have previously presented today and will present today, not only do I recommend these findings, but the chain of command by the Albuquerque Police Department, which would mean the officer's supervisor, his commander, his deputy chief, and the chief of police have reviewed the entire file and have agreed with the findings. And I would submit that perhaps what could be further explanation could be made into there. Not only were there one officers, but there were two officers present, and neither one of those officers had any trouble communicating with the woman, which is contained in the letter. And perhaps it could be further explained, why they believe that she understood them and they understood her. It wasn't as though there was no communication. And so I think that the letter could be rewritten to further explain what actually happened at the scene of that traffic stop, because everyone understood each other enough to understand what was going on in the traffic stop, and I believe she was giving a warning ticket or warning and not a citation, if I have my facts correct. So it's not as though we all just gave up. There was understanding there among the parties, and all three people, the two officers and the woman, and that perhaps could be further clarified within the letter.
Commissioner Foster.
So IRO, could you clarify for me, when this letter comes back to you, what the procedure you will provide to APD's chain of command in relation to this? Since they have approved this letter and agreed with it?
I don't provide them anything. What I would do is resubmit the letter to this commission, to the Police Oversight Commission for further consideration.
So the letter has been submitted to APD's chain of command, and APD's chain of command has approved or endorsed or agreed, that's a better term, agreed with your findings, and now we have an impasse with us. So going back to you to rework this letter you do not need to run it through APD's process again.
I would not be rewriting the findings. I would be further explaining what I found and what the chief agreed to, and the commander and the deputy chief.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Shine.
for the benefit of my colleagues, I made the motion. With and my intention was, and my expectation is, it'll be remanded to the IRO if it's passed, and the IRO will review, and the investigator will review with more particularity the investigative results, the interviews of the officer, and I think I assume were recorded, and then see if they can redraft a letter that answers some of the concerns that have been raised by the commission in the current vote. And therefore, it might change the current vote, first of all. Secondly, even if it doesn't, at the next meeting, Commissioner Barker may be here, we may not have an even number of people, and we have a decision without a split vote. So I think there's some value to sending it back to the IRO to reevaluate and restructure the letter.
If I may make a comment, and then I'll call on you. I think that this is, it is troublesome when there is no recording of an incident. this is one of those cases where I'm kind of bridling up against that. I don't know why exactly this case particularly. I find my fellow commissioners' arguments to be sound. And so that's because there is no tape recording, because we have a vulnerable citizen involved. I'm particularly distressed by this incident. But Commissioner Shine may be correct. Commissioner Foster.
Point of clarification, if I may, please. When we voted, so what you are saying is that we voted on sending it back to the IRO.
We haven't yet.
Okay, but you're to have it reworked, but we are not voting on changing the outcome of the IRO's current decision.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Shine.
I don't know what's going on. I'm not directing the IRO to do anything. I'm just asking her to review it. I mean, if they review the file and review the tape of the officers' statements and all that, and they decide to change the result, that's fine. Whatever they're going to come back. Well, the only point of the motion is to have them review the matter again, and if necessary, redraft the letter with its present proposed findings, but in a clearer way, or if they think it's inappropriate, then change the findings. But all this is a suggestion, since we can't approve it, and have another vote to disallow it, presumably it's also going to be split evenly, so we can't act with a split vote. And the solution, seems to me, is to have the IRO look at it again and see what she comes up with as a result of a further review.
Okay, so is there a second to Commissioner Shine's motion?
Second.
Commissioner Siegel, is there any further discussion? Okay, we're ready to vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, so it is 5-1. Commissioner Foster is the dissenting vote. Okay, next.
The next case I'd like to present for your consideration is CPC 0813. This is a case in which the complainant called the police because he was having trouble with his apartment manager. The complainant alleged that the officers were rude and that their conduct was inappropriate. The complainant said he did not give consent for the officers to be in his home, and the officers say that he did give consent. The IRO investigator interviewed several people, including the individual and his friend, and the officers involved. I found that there was not insufficient evidence with respect to Officer L for the allegation of improper conduct, one way or the other, to determine it, and made a finding of not sustained against the allegation of misconduct. With respect to whether or not the officer had consent to search, I also found that there was not enough evidence to prove one way or the other, and made a finding of not sustained. With respect to the allegation that the officer failed to write a report as required, I found that the officer's conduct, as alleged, did violate the report writing SOP and made a finding of sustained of the conduct. With respect to the officer failing to tape record, I made a finding, Officer L, of sustained. He should have tape recorded it. With respect to a second officer there, Officer H, regarding the consent to search, or actually enter his apartment is what we're really talking. I found that there was not sufficient evidence one way or the other, and made a finding of not sustained. The Albuquerque Police Department chain of command, the commander of the two officers, the deputy chief assigned to that division, and the chief of police all agreed with my finding to review the entire file. I recommend that you adopt the letter as written.
I recommend approval of CPC 008-13. Is there a second? Commissioner Siegel seconds. Is there discussion? Commissioner Shine.
May I ask that consider the motion to be amended so that to authorize an amendment to the letter, I would suggest on the first page of the letter, the last line, before the words "two APD officers arrived," there should be inserted the words "Mr." with the name of the citizen alleged that two officers arrived. Because all that follows is an allegation of the gentleman, not of the complainant, not the fact necessarily.
Okay, so insert the word alleged.
The words Mr. Blank, his name, alleged that,
Okay,
and then it goes on.
I would be willing to consider that as an amendment to the letter. Mr. Siegel, are you willing to consider that as an amendment to the letter?
It's fine, there's no real quibble because there are two officers and they're both interviewed later, so I don't really understand the nature of it, but it doesn't seem part of the letter.
Okay. So, are we ready to vote? All in favor of approving CPC 008-13 with that small change, please raise your right hand. It is unanimous.
The next letter I would consider to present for your consideration is CPC 10-13. This is an individual who complained about his treatment at the prisoner transport unit while initially held in a group cell. The complainant was arrested and had his handcuffs behind him and somehow was able to contort his body to get his handcuffs in front. This created a disturbance within the group cell, and the prisoner transport units moved the complainant to his cell by himself, which did not sit well with the complainant, and he and then he moved his hands to the front again, and after being restrained in a way in which he could not move his handcuffs around from front to back, the PTU units followed their procedures and confined the complainant in a way that he could not do that. After being confined in a way that he could no longer move his hands from front to back, he began to hit his head against the cell of the wall. There were several PTU unit officers involved who were supervising the prisoner transport unit that evening, and the IRO investigator interviewed the complainant and all of the officers involved. I made findings with respect to all of the officers based on the review of the evidence and the investigation. With respect to Officer G, I found that through viewing of the video and interviews, that his conduct was appropriate and followed the SOP, and I found that I would say he should be exonerated from that allegation. With respect to Officer G, in his use of the zip tie restraining method to restrain a prisoner, I found that the conduct should be exonerated. With respect to Officer G, that he should have recorded the incident himself, even though there are overall cameras at the PT unit. I found that Officer G should have recorded the incident in addition to the other recordings. I found that allegation should be sustained. Regarding the allegation that Officer G was jointly responsible for putting the complainant in headgear to prevent injury to his head, I found that allegation of failing to follow that SOP to be sustained. With respect to prisoner transport unit Officer C, I found that the use of the zip tie and his participation in that followed the SOP, and that conduct to be exonerated. With regard to that he should have recorded, make sure that the whole incident was recorded. I'm sorry, record the incident. I found that he too should have individually recorded the incident, and I found the conduct against Officer C to be sustained. With respect to Officer C's participation in the failure to put a helmet on the head of the prisoner banging their head against the wall, I found that the officer should be sustained. With respect to Officer M, there's an allegation that the use of during the restraining of the complainant, that the improperly used force. I found that the video showed that the actions taken by Officer M were appropriate, and the use of force should be exonerated. With respect to Officer M, in his duty to record the incident as well, I found that he should be sustained with respect to that allegation. With respect to Officer M, he too should have ensured that someone put a headgear onto the complainant so he would not injure himself. I found this allegation of this conduct to be sustained as a violation of that SOP. With respect to Officer A, who was also present, his failure to record, I believe that he should have recorded it individually as well, and I find that his conduct should be sustained with respect to recording. Regarding Officer L, his conduct he was an acting sergeant at the time, and there is insufficient evidence whether he acted in a way that he should have as the acting sergeant in ensuring that the prisoner was appropriately dealt with. I found that allegation to be not sustained. With respect to the acting sergeant PTU Officer L, I found that he should have ensured that headgear was put onto the complainant. Albuquerque Police Department chain of command has reviewed the file, all the reports, and the videos, and the chain of command and the chief of police have agreed with my findings. I recommend that you approve the letter as written.
Okay, I move approval of CPC, gosh, it's a long one, isn't it? 10-13. And there's a second from Commissioner Shine. Now, discussion, Commissioner Shine.
May I ask, what was this individual arrested for in this incident?
I don't recall.
Is there any indication that he was intoxicated or mentally ill, or do you have any indication about his